morning, everyone, and welcome to this latest iteration of the Indica Books Open House. My name is Abhinav Agarwal. I'm the curator of Indica Books, and we do this every week where we invite aspiring writers, authors to send in their writing pieces, short writing pieces, about 800 to 900 words in length. And then we have Otis, who will review your pieces, mark them up with his feedback, send them back to you, and then we spend roughly 90 minutes on Friday. Sorry, what am I saying? We'll spend 90 minutes on Sunday going over those pieces. And yes, we take immense joy in running down people who have sent in their pieces. We hold them up to public ridicule for the entire wide world to see just how terrible they are. No, of course not. Otis is incredibly patient. His feedback is invaluable. And as a group, we try and learn. We see what kind of things work for writing, what kind of things don't, and what can be improved. So this is your opportunity to make use of this avenue and see if you can improve your writing, because at the end of the day, writing, like any other craft, is one that improves with the focused practice. So we keep our recordings up. We put up our recordings on YouTube. We have a Twitter group handle at Indica Books, and we have a Facebook group. So search for us, or you can simply go to facebook.com/groups/Indic Book Club. And we invite you to join the discussion there. With that, I'll turn this over to you, Otis.
Okay, thank you. Ram, let's start with you. Ram, you put a different background in, but was the first background that you had, was that a real background? Was that really where you were? It kind of looked like it with the wooden roof and things, or was that?
Yeah. So. No, I put this background because I am actually at a resort. It's an elephant camp, and the power went out here, so everything was black. So I had turned on my camera, so I thought I'll put up the background so that you don't just say an inky black. So this is actually where I am.
This is incredible. I love it. What do you mean?
Which resort is this, Ram?
Yeah, this is Dubare Elephant Camp in Coorg.
Dubare Elephant Camp. Wonderful, yeah. Wonderful.
Can you please?
I'm sitting in the common lunchroom because there is no Wi-Fi anywhere else. This is the only place where I get Wi-Fi. This is the dining room, and when the power goes out, there is no light around. It's a fabulous place, of course.
Can you please either send me that on the chat? I'm so bad with, but maybe on email, like where it is. I want to look it up.
I'll do that.
I'll send you a link, or yeah, Ram will send you a link.
Yeah, I'll do that.
There's right now my daughter is doing this thing called the New York Film Academy, and she went last summer to Florida. They also have one in India, so I'm trying to kind of be, hey, do you want to do the one in India next summer? And now you're telling me about elephant camps. I'm like, please, let's gather more of these things together. Because I know that I can't just go. I have to like make it so my daughter's going, and then I go along with it.
Of course, please, you're very welcome here. Let me try and tempt you with one more thing. We had gone on a jungle safari yesterday, and we had a elephant in Mast come after our jeep.
I need to have these experiences, Ram. I'm very jealous. Okay, Rob, we're going to start with your work.
Sure.
Let's have you read the first page.
Okay.
I'm going to have you. Let's see. I'll get a little mark here. Just right to the seething part.
All right. The ancient Ajnamar people who live in the jungles at the foot of the mountains and worship nature never offer flowers to the sun. Every Ajnamar knows the reason, and every Ajnamar has heard the story from Ayan Ajnamar, the oldest Ajnamar alive. Ayan heard the story from his grandfather, who heard it from his grandfather, and so on, right up to the first Ajnamar. Ayan is 200 years old. What he says has to be true. The story starts at the beginning of time, before the first Ajnamar walked Earth. It was a happy time of an unending cool night, for there was no day, and stars as big as the moon twinkled in the black sky all the time. Because there was no day, there was no drought, and because there was no drought, the streams and lakes flowed full all the time. The stars that twinkled in the sky loved Earth, for Earth was their child, and she was their favorite child. To show her gratitude, Earth sprouted flowers in thousands, flowers that carried her fragrance to the stars. The stars descended down to Earth frequently and left diamonds, tiny pieces of themselves on the petals of the flowers every time they visited. The flowers thus became dear to the stars and Earth because they carried the fragrance of Earth to the stars and conveyed pieces of the stars to the Earth. It was a happy time, but it did not last long. While the stars gave, I am yet to find the word here, so it's blank, to Earth, there was one star who did not. He was a tiny star, tinier than all the other stars, so tiny that one had to squint hard to see him in the black sky. He was so tiny that he got very little of the fragrance of Earth that the flowers conveyed. His name was Sun.
Sun sat in the corner of the sky, brooding, seething. I want to tack that on. Okay, so so this is a wonderful story. So the Ajnamar, that's a real group.
No, it is not.
You made it up?
Yeah. So if you read Ayan Ajnamar, that's my name spelled in reverse.
Okay, too clever, too clever. Okay, so you've made up this group, and then you've made up this entire story?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, I like it. Great. So that's a surprise. I mean, I thought that this was a real folktale that you were reproducing, and I think it's lovely.
Thank you.
I think to me, the question was really how to present it. It doesn't, to me have the flavor of a modern story exactly, because it's dealing with such large abstract issues. You obviously have a lot of experience in folk tales and mythology, and it has those elements of like, how did why are the bees striped, and I mean you're really working with a lot of just wonderful elements. And so I don't know, you have something really wonderful started here. I mean, what do you want to do with it?
I don't know. One day I just thought that I will write it. This was actually the trigger for this was I think a couple of weeks back. I don't remember if it was Jay or Sri Charan. In their submission there was a folk tale where the frogs cover the earth and protect the earth from the wrath of Indra. So I thought it was a wonderful Sri Charan, yeah. So I thought it was a wonderful story, and I thought why not write a folk tale like that, and that's how this started.
Well, you have any number of things that you can do with this piece. At this point, you can either have it be a folk tale that somehow is part of then maybe a more traditional modern story that has protagonists and antagonists in it that are human. So I mean, the issue with the folk tale is that it's like an origin story, right?
Yeah.
It essentially explains the natural environment and the natural world. It isn't driven by, our classic story structure is driven by setting up a conflict and then having the reader wonder what's going to happen basically next, right? So that's the main drive of the story. This doesn't really, we have that a little bit, but the problem is that it's hard for us to conceptualize the stars. Like we don't, so like if we think of a traditional story of setting up the conflict and setting up why we care, those two things, everyone, two things, not one thing, two things, not one and not the other, two. Okay. So if we think of those two things, it's hard for us to feel sympathetic resonance with stars, with the sun, with the flowers, with earth. We the way we feel sympathetic resonance with our protagonists is through our common human struggle. So our universally common struggle. It's a little bit different if we're writing a thesis-driven story or something like that. Then the cohesive element is somewhat different. But in our fiction, that's what it is. So it's difficult to develop that. So I could see this being part of a story that then had these other elements involved in it. So, but that would be quite a bit longer, since this is quite long, right? As a folk tale, like in Sharon's, like he has a little
correct.
folk
It was
tale,
nested in a story. Yeah,
and then part of this other story that's going on. And so you could do something like that.
So in this, I try to set up the conflict where in the opening paragraph it says that these tribals, they do not offer flowers to the sun. So that sort of creates a little bit of curiosity in the mind of the reader. Okay, why is that? Why are they doing like that? So I don't know if it qualifies as a conflict, but it is setting up a little bit of that curiosity. And there is an antagonist, which is the sun, because obviously the sun is stealing stuff and the like. But there is no clear protagonist here. So when I wrote the story, I realized that yes, there is no clear protagonist. That's not there, but there's an antagonist. So I don't know how the reader would identify with it, because when I wrote the story, I thought that yes, there is probably a universal theme where there is somebody who is coming and stealing things that are not his, and obviously that is not something that anybody would like to have. And then there is a clever sort of an idea that somebody does, because of which the person is stopped from what he is doing. This is sort of a common thing. Like we always see that in our places of work, we find that there are people who steal credit, and then somebody comes up with a clever way to expose them. So that's a situation I thought that we could identify with. So I don't know how universally acceptable that would be to a reader.
Well, so I want you really to try and conceptualize, what happens when I talk about sympathetic resonance between the reader and the protagonist. That is this thing that happens where the reader basically feels like they're having the experience of the protagonist. That tie.
That is not there here. Yeah.
That is. I'm going to say again, absolutely essential, basically, because it is how the story works for the reader. The reader feels like they have an experience about someone like themselves, and then when we get to the end, they learn something from that experience without actually having that experience.
Correct.
So it's a situation of peril that the reader is able to consider in repose, basically. So they're not anxious. They're not anxious like the characters might be, but they get to. It's like, how we have basically two brains, right? We have the one that's very active, the survival brain, and then we have the brain basically at rest, that can think and et cetera, et cetera. So basically the reading experience combines those two. We have a character that's basically involved in a survival struggle, but the reader gets to perceive it from this sort of this state of repose. And it's that combination of experiences that is so satisfying in the reading experience.
Yes, that's true.
So, but all you say is good. So, Ram, to me, the only thing I was going to say about this piece is I think that this should be a children's story or an illustrated book. I was going to tell you that I would be happy to work on it with you. We could be co-authors, where you write your story here is wonderful. It's a wonderful story. If we were to, I would collect up. You have resources, the Indica group. The resources. We need an illustrator. We need an illustrator. We need to map out the story. if it were me and I were doing it as a kid's book,
Right.
I would have the Ajnamar people, I would have
Right.
them be bees. I would have them be bees
Okay.
gathered around. So the first image would be them as bees with an elder, and they're all the elders going back. That's the group, and they're basically their origin story.
Right. Right. Okay.
That would be, as a children's book, it would be wonderful. I
Oh
thought,
yes, I would love to do that with you. Yes.
yeah, I thought other than this being like, I thought that this was a legit hope story. So it also could be probably, you know, like it appears like one of these, you know, there's books of folk tales. If you don't have many books of folk tales in India, I don't know, but that's another thing you should do. You should have a collection of folk tales. You know, like there should be, you know, from different people in different regions to collect up the folk tales. That is also a great idea for a book. If it's going to be new and it doesn't exist. In the U.S. we have folk studies of it, folklore studies, I guess. So there are people, academics, that do collect stories.
Yes.
And you probably have some of that too. But that is not this piece, because this piece is made up, and I think it's
made up.
I think it's wonderful. You have the entire plot. You've invented the entire situation. I think it's novel. I've never seen anything like it before. I was surprised at various things that happen. You know, the fact that the pieces of the star turn into honey at the end. I mean, I think it's just marvelous. It's a charming story. So what you have to do now is you have to move away. I don't know how good you are at this stuff, but you have to move to the business of getting something published, which is you have the story, you've outlined the story. All you have to do is really collect up, you know, the resources, the publisher, the illustrator. I would be happy to jump aboard on this project, because you want to basically construct the prose so that it's very accessible for the audience that you're targeting, essentially. So, you know, that takes a little thoughtfulness. This is too complex for a young audience right now. It's not too complex for an academic audience that's like a folklorist or something like that. But that audience is much smaller than you know, making this a wonderful children's book. I mean, it's a fabulous story you've written here.
Thank you very much. It means a lot.
Yeah, and you can see that, like, so once you like, so my idea, basically, the thing I'm adding, you know, you make this, you know, the group of elders, you know, or the village or whatever, one of bees. So now, you know, and you have, you know, a small bee who's listening. The child identifies with the bee, right?
Right.
An adult in adult fiction, we don't tend to identify with animals, but children do. So now you've developed a sense of resonance. It is this, you know, wonderful story. My daughters love Grimm's fairy tales. They love folklore, actually. So I think it's really great. So you just have to decide what your priorities are. You would obviously have to spend time to make this turn into a published book, but I think that it's very possible. This is the time.
I will do that. And really thrilled that if I could collaborate with you on this.
It'd be great. I would just you know, you just want to plot it out, because, and you'll understand when you do it with the illustrations that you're basically thinking about, like, you want to plot it out so that it goes along with an illustration, right? And so that gives us essentially pieces, and it's like doing a storyboard essentially. And when you break this down into a storyboard, you'll see the elements, you've already invented them. Now you just have to make sure that they basically have sort of even weight, if that makes sense. You have two
Yes, it makes a lot
lines.
of sense.
Yeah, 2 lines to describe this, 2 lines to describe that, simple, direct language, but it's some work, but it's a beautiful story. I hope you will share it with everyone. And
I do that.
it's inventive, it's fun, it's unusual. Okay, that's all I got to say about it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Shri Tran, let's take a look at your story.
Yeah, hi Otis. Am I audible by the way? My internet is somewhat breaking today, so I'm
Yeah,
thinking I could stop my video so that I could focus on the audio.
Your audio feed is clear enough, at least to me, clear, loud and clear.
Okay. Okay, so let's try it. So I'll keep my video on, but if I think the internet is going, I'll just close my video.
Oh, okay, good. If some of you stay on board, then I feel like I'm, talking to other human beings. It makes me feel better, but we can. Shutran, can you read the first page of the story?
Yeah, sure. The cave was dark inside, with fumes of incense warring with the morbid stench in the air. Rangappa felt his head thump at that smell, but he bore it quietly. A small pool lay at the bottom of the cave, but the residents of the pool were mosquitoes and leeches. One must carefully descend the rocks and walk into the middle of the pool to show their palms to the seer seated on this rock. Rangappa would not have bothered to have his future divined in this gloom, if not for his nagging wife and pious brother. Fine, he had told them. But if fortune is something bad, I will not have you both weep like the sky has fallen. The queue was not short either. Rangappa stood at the edge of the pool, and at least a score of people stood with their knees submerged between him and the seer. He could feel a few leeches trying to crawl on his legs now and then, but he shook them off. Look out for the leeches, he warned his wife and his brother. But neither of them seemed to have heard him. Their ears were on the words of the seer ahead. One of your bulls will run away this week, the seer spoke to the first man in the queue, and the other will fall sick. The queue moved a little further. You will clear your debt before this month. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Shutran. I really, really like the seer, right? The seer, the collection of things that you come up with that the seer says. So, the seer spoke to the first man in the queue, and the other will fall. Sorry, the seer spoke. Your bull will run away. The other will fall sick. You will clear your debt before this month. Your wife yields a daughter, and she will be the fortune of your house. The seer's voice was heavy, et cetera, et cetera. And then, it's just, the scene is quite wild.
So I'll give you just a background. So this is my attempt to fulfill that assignment of having a beginning, middle, and end. But I did not complete it yet. So I just sent the beginning portion of what I have written.
So it's a little bit too long in terms of the beginning,
yeah.
right?
It was supposed to be 1 page, but it went 3 years or 3 or something.
But, and I think Ashbani did also try and Ram, was yours also an attempt to do the assignment, the 4-page story?
It was. Only 4 pages became 8 pages.
Okay, so I'll say, like, I read all these stories. I'm like, it's a 4-page story, and they are they don't have the sort of tightness of the beginning, the 2 in the middle, with the rising to a climax and then the end. They don't quite do that, but I'm very pleased if that idea of a structure inspired you to write these works.
Yeah, it did. It certainly did.
Yes.
So, I think in the beginning, I don't know that I believe this environment fully. you perceive of this environment as being a real kind of environment, or do you
Well, it
think,
was
or is it all
certainly made up, but I am sure there exists similar environments. I mean, I I have seen similar environments. I mean, not exactly, but close enough.
so? Well, I mean, the thing is, like so you have the seer is in a cave. The supplicant, that we can call them such, they are going kind of down a path into the cave. There's going to be some, I don't know, lights or torches. They walk through water that is infested with leeches and stand in the water in front of, so like getting a little bit like, I have to understand that. I mean, it's almost like they're doing a kind of penance, to,
Well, I'd say it is sort of a blind, not blind, but utter devotion to that seer. So that's why they stand in that long queues like that.
right. So, yes, yes. We have to be a little careful because, like, you might see people who are, let's say, devout and extremely superstitious or something like that as maybe doing these things, but not understand how you might also do them, right? Like, if there's a disconnect between you and and seeing people who might do this, then you're actually talking about sort of an unreality. You need to feel like what's happening on the page is being done by human beings, not people that are being made up in order to do the thing that we want them to do. So it's a complicated way to say it, and I apologize, but it's like we cannot be writers up here like gods, moving the strings of little marionette characters who are subhuman, basically, than to us. We would never do this, but they, stupid human beings, do. We don't want to write like that, because what happens is that the reader wants to identify with the character. But if the character behaves in a way that's not human, or they seem to be judged by the writer, then we have a difficult time with being able to kind of connect with those characters. They don't seem real, but it's not just that they don't seem real. None of us want to basically kind of attach to these characters that are being judged as stupid, superstitious. I mean, they can be superstitious. They can be all of these things, but you as the writer have to see the common humanity in them. You cannot write about them as if you're up here and these people are doing things that you don't understand, right? You have to be with them. Yes, you write above. Yes, you write the story here, but you also have to be connected with them and see the humanity of your characters. This is to me, it's a very profound comment on what we do as writers.
I want to say something.
Yeah.
The judgment portion, it was not. I mean, I wanted to write like that. Like, it was not I who was judging them, but the protagonist who is judging them.
No, I know, I get that, but I mean, I actually don't mean that protagonist. Yes, the protagonist judges them, but I mean in the sense of this being a real thing that people would actually do. Like, we have to understand how it is that they would do such a thing, in a sense, because it's so extreme what you're writing. It would be one thing if they were waiting. I mean, the queen died, I guess, right? I didn't see that, but the queen died, and then people were, I guess, on lines for I don't know how long in order to get a glimpse of her coffin, right? So clearly people will do a lot of things, right? It must make some kind of sense, even though it doesn't make sense to me that they do that. They wait for days and that they're out there, but I can see their longing and need, I guess. I'm not sure that I'm perceiving the longing and need that allows these people to walk into the water with the leeches and the mosquitoes. Like, that seems extreme to me. It could make sense, but right now I'm not getting enough information for it to make sense.
Yeah, okay.
It's actually just a small comment, Shritra. It's not a big deal. But the other thing that a little bit in the opening is I'm not feeling really immersed in the environment so that I even feel that it's a real environment, right?
Okay.
Like, I don't feel like I'm a character walking through water with leeches. Have you ever walked through water and gotten leeches on you?
I won't. I mean, but it depends on how desperate for the what was on the other side was. So
Right.
let's say there was a huge treasure in the middle of that pool. Maybe I will, maybe.
Okay, but you've never had the experience of being in water and getting a leech on you, or have you? Okay.
No, never.
Okay, so one, you're not going to feel it.
Yeah, I understand.
So you're not going to feel it. The leech is almost like water itself, so it's that delicate. Its incision into your skin, also not one that you're going to feel, and particularly in the water.
Yeah, I understand.
Anyway, there's things here. If you need to have water in the leeches, then you need to basically make us believe it. You know, so, like, I mean, that's them walking up, and then, you know, the guy who does not believe, you know, our main character who does not believe in this is like, I'm not going to walk in that. I mean, why would he? He doesn't even believe what they're going to say. Anyway, so it's just, you want to bear down on this environment and make sure, since you're writing something that's, I want to say, like, it's basically realistic. I feel like I'm dealing with real people, and so you have to make me believe it. And right now I don't really believe it. So you have to do the work that makes me believe it. Like, how could people do this? And that can't be just this sort of distant thing as like, yes, there are some crazy people who would do that. That's not how for us as writers, there aren't crazy people. There's human beings everywhere. And we all behave basically the same way. Even if you're writing a fantasy, so Sri Charan, you often actually create these worlds that are just incredible. Like, I still remember that place with the trees where they go up into the tree village, you know, near the river. I mean, I would be hard pressed to say that doesn't exist. I don't know. I still don't quite know if it does or not. But even if we're inventing something that's not real, it still has to be believable. So the same principles of the universe as we as human beings understand them have to be present there. Gravity has to be there unless we have some reason why it isn't, right? Superman can fly because he's from Krypton, right? We have to understand the logic of the universe you're inventing. So I'm just saying, but you're not really doing that. This is meant to be a real place, so you have to really draw us into this reality. Yeah, this story is, you know, it's moving on. I love this seer, and then I'm not sure what's driving these characters to go see the seer, but then I like that the characters are all differentiated. That's very smart, right? So you have the brother who is a cynic. You have the brother who is, you know, devout and pious. You have the nagging wife, and I would suggest try not to write stereotypes, you know. So, like, the one female character is going to be a nagging wife. You got to do better than that, right? Because
I thought this comment would come. I'll try.
Yeah. So it has come and taken in. So
Yeah, sure.
I've had this, like, so I've taught a lot of workshops, and someone will write basically a stereotype. Okay, we'll say a stereotype, and then I'll say, well, the first couple of times I've experienced this, I walked in not ready for what I was going to get, but after a while I prepared, right? So people will say, but stereotypes exist, right? They're real. Okay, number one, no one on earth thinks of themselves as a stereotype. We all know ourselves in a complex way. If we know ourselves in a complex way, then it must be true that everyone understands themselves in a complex way. Understanding someone in a superficial way can only be done this way. I see you as a stereotype. They are not a stereotype. They cannot be a stereotype. They can only be seen as a stereotype from someone else. We don't want to reveal ourselves as writers in that way, right? We don't want to reveal ourselves as writers, one, that are not capable of seeing the common humanity in everyone, or a person who's engaged in basically not. I'm going to back up a second. I've been delving deeply into the difference between making and seeing as an artist. It came up with my daughter. She would draw. She loves to draw, right? I'm like, are you making the horse or are you seeing the horse? Well, there's no horse there, right? So she's making it. As opposed to looking at a horse and drawing what she sees. We're the same way, right, as writers. So when you write nagging wife, are you making a nagging wife, or are you seeing a woman who's standing in that pool with leeches on her, waiting to hear the knowledge from the seer? Are you seeing goes this way, or are you making goes that way?
Well, my intention is to make her, but
yeah. So I'm trying to get you to change your intention from making her to seeing her.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's a really big. So I don't think this is a small thing that I'm talking about. That we're talking about a big thing, right? In terms of the way.
I understand what you're saying. Like, I do really. What I am trying to convey is that it's not how I was looking or how I was making them, but the character in that is seeing like that. His wife as nagging wife. Maybe she was very devout and very kind in real life, but her husband was viewing like that.
Okay, so we're actually drawing into a really great and complex conversation. Your character can have a bias, but your narrator cannot.
Yes.
I'm sort of dictating that, but sorry, do what you want, break my rules or whatever, but this is my basic feeling. My shortcut is, the character can say, she can say, please, come on, go ahead, step into the water. And he can say, we can have, our protagonist can write something like, her typical nagging, he thought. Okay, dear, I will, right? Her typical nagging, he thought, okay, that's fine. He has a bias. All human beings have a bias. We as writers should not have a bias, because if we have a bias, we are judging people. We're judging people positively or negatively. And the problem is that our reader is afraid of being judged. And so they cannot attach and enter into our story safely because they have fear. we don't want our reader to have any fear that we, as the narrator, are going to judge them. That what if the person who opened up the story is, married, right? Right? She's married and she's reading along and she's like, oh, here's another nagging wife. Is that me? Am I a nagging wife? Now she feels judged. She's not going to read your story anymore. We don't want that.
Yes.
So
Yes, I understand.
We're talking a lot about it. Shrikcharan, this is like a small thing. This is, it's for all of us as writers, and it's taken me a long time to kind of come around with this and understand it through teaching. I certainly have written many, many stereotypes because that's how we first understand the world. We're grappling with the world and we're trying to understand it intellectually and put it into boxes. When we get up to the state of being a writer, we really have to start seeing this common humanity that we all share and seeing that within everyone. Everyone has their foibles. Yes, it's true. They have their ways of doing things, but they're all complexly human. Anyway, but you'll notice when you watch movies, right? When you watch movies and you have a collection of characters, they all have different attributes. In fact, in the movies, they even make fun of this now, right? It's almost a meta commentary. There's the person who's, if you have an action movie, you have the person who's good with the knife, right? There's the person who's good with his fists. There's the person who's, right? There's the person who's a technical expert, right? I mean, everyone gets kind of classed because it's shorthand for differentiating characters.
Yes.
So we definitely see it, and it is good to do that. It is good to differentiate our characters so that we can see each of them individually. But I think if we want to rise up as artists, we want to really see their individuality rather than making their individuality, right? We want to see them, not make them. I love this story. There was just you had the line of, okay, so just this line, the seer, so when our protagonist is here, the seer says, death follows you. Wait, yes. Let's see, I see two futures. One has a very long life, the other disappears after 2 months from now. Okay, so it's such a difference from what the seer has done before that I think you really want to announce it for us a little bit. Seer can look and, maybe he says you will die in 2 months. And he says, no, wait, let me see again. You will live. And then again, it's like, you will die and you will live. So take us through it, because what he's been doing all along has been so, he feel like a seer to me, right? He just like, whatever it is, it's just incredible the way he goes through people's various futures. It's beautiful and it's beautiful. So you want to help us understand the sort of typical market. Right now you're like, I have never seen an ambiguity in my prediction. Well, then that's going to be a pretty big event for him too, right? All along he's been seeing things like this. How many years, how old is he? 40 years, 50 years, he's been a seer, and now today he's in futures. So you're going to have to blow that up a little bit.
Yeah, I try to condense it. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, but make me believe this story, and it's wonderful. Make me believe this story.
Yeah.
And I really, really look forward to it.
Yeah.
Okay, Ashmani, let's talk about your story. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to have you. This is again with the 4-page story. Can I have you read? this section.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
He heard loud voices, and two young men appeared, winded by their run to the scene, the boy with the stick in their toe. Taking in the sight at one glance, the taller one, obviously the elder too, growled aggressively at Raj. Why were you going so fast? You have killed our cow. Raj decided not to be on the defensive. You should not have let the cow cross the road like that without checking for oncoming traffic. The youth raised the stout staff in his hand above his head and moved towards Raj menacingly. You are teaching me what to do? We've been living here for years, even before this road came up. Raj bluffed. I have called the police and I am sure they are on their way. We will see when they come. Ha! Then you will pay us for the cow and the police will make you pay for driving carelessly, he said with a smirk.
Okay. Thank you, Ashwani. So tell me a little bit about the story. What was your idea here?
It's just an invented story. Nothing to go with any past experience as such. But I just wanted to create a story where this chap, the protagonist, hits a cow and then he gets into trouble because the villagers and the local politicians, they try and demand an absolutely extortionate kind of amount from him, something like 50 lakhs, which he understands is absolutely unreasonable, but is unable to do anything because there is a local politician involved. And then at the end, I wanted to leave the story without a definite conclusion and just put like you used to put it, a coyote jumping over the cliff and just leaving it there.
Okay. So some of the things I noticed in this story, so we're in page 2. So I think that you have something really great here with this, this person hits the cow crossing the road. This is our protagonist. He feels that, this is an accident, right? We know from earlier that he's been looking out, to kind of catch a glimpse of the sun. So, there's a long period before this, but like once we get into this section here, this is on page 2, right? But we actually have these defined protagonists and antagonists. This is where I want you, for everyone, I would suggest to you that you try to start with that, right? Try and bring that up front, because then we understand the conflict. And the conflict is what drives us to try and know what's going to happen in the story. Before this, I'm going to make a kind of arrow here. Before this moment, is it Raj? No. Oh yeah, Raj. At Raj. So Raj, before this, he's basically alone. And he's just having a relationship with the environment, essentially. And the environment is not the antagonist. Or even if the environment was the antagonist in some kind of symbolic way, it's not a personified antagonist. So it's not one that we can use to dramatize what the issue is. I mean, if you imagine this story as a play, right, you wouldn't have scene 1 with someone sitting alone in a car. I mean, scene 1. Let's imagine our play is 45 minutes. Let's see. Let's imagine our play is an hour. Okay, so 4-page story. We're going to make it an hour, 15 minutes for each one. So 15 minutes of our scene 1. Scene 2 and 3 are going to be half an hour and 15 minutes for the end. So we're not going to have the first 15 minutes with someone silently. Everyone in the audience would be like wondering why they're there, right? So I would try and move it up front. move this scene up front. I really like, the youth raised this, let's see, you should not have let the cow cross the road like that without checking for oncoming traffic. Okay, so I understand Raj's point of view. The youth raised a stout staff in his hand above his head and moved towards Raj menacingly. You are teaching me what to do? We have been living here for years, even before this road came up. I like that. I see this person's point of view too, Ashwani. You might not. I think you might not, but I do. I think that that's a very legitimate point of view that you're coming up with. I can feel in this story, the way it's written, that you have a protagonist, Raj, who you basically think is right, correct, and you have these other people with the cow who are not, right? They're corrupt politicians. They are, aggressive villagers. They are all this collection of things. So they're wrong, and this person is right. If your story is an argument, we know the fallacies. What rhetorical fallacy have you written? This is a test from last week, Ashwani. I'll give you a hint. It's a straw man. This is a really important concept for all of us. Okay, really important. When we enter into a story, it has to be a story of equal forces. When we write a thesis, if we write a thesis, it has to be a real argument that's worth treating. Not my argument is right and you're a crazy straw man that's totally wrong. My argument is right because I'm rational. Your argument is wrong because you're totally irrational. This is not what we can do. Same thing in our story. We can see that our story, in a way, is an argument. Protagonist force and antagonistic force. The protagonist can't be right, and the antagonist simply wrong. That is not life. That's not the world. The world doesn't exist like that. We want to write stories that depict the real world. In the same way, we can't have the protagonist be wrong and the antagonist be right. That doesn't work either. What we have are two forces, belief systems, worldviews, even more deeply than belief systems, we have the fact that each of us as individuals develop our own sense of what reality is, right? Within ourselves, within communities, etc. But the communities are larger, but the first place is within ourselves. These are the things that clash. They're both that we come up with our own belief systems, our own sense of self, our own ego, whatever we want to call it. That is absolutely human and equal among all people. We, as artists up here, we bring these human beings, these equal forces together to see what happens. If the protagonist is right and these people are wrong, we don't wonder what's going to happen. This person is right. If the antagonists are right, then we also don't wonder what's going to happen. If the antagonist is stronger than the protagonist, as we have the case here, Ashwani, we know what's going to happen. We need to create a sense, we need to create equal forces. And as writers, we have to understand the legitimacy of all sides. And that gets back to us being able to see. Like with Sri Charan, we talk about the nagging wife. So that's not seeing, that's making. Here, you maybe see, I can feel that you see and even understand Raj, but you're making his adversaries. You're making them. You're not seeing them. So we want to get to that place where we see them. I think you have something very interesting here. And then the next thing is, this is kind of, I'm just going to say this in a sweeping way. What happens in the story is that basically Raj is victimized. I mean, in the frame of the story as I read it, he's driving along, by accident he hits a cow, and now he's going to be beaten up, right? Basically, he's going to be beaten up, has money taken, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So he's just a victim. Stories are not driven by victimization. They are driven by the reader's connection to the protagonist and the protagonist committing to a set of actions in order to make the world the way he wants it, or he or she wants it. In doing that against this world of antagonism, there's a conflict, because the world of antagonism also wants the world to be the way they want it. Because they're equal, it doesn't end up with one side winning over the other. It ends up with a change of some kind. As I see it, the ending of stories when we do them well are a merger of the antagonistic and protagonistic forces. When you write a story like this, Ashwani, your task as a writer is to really understand this antagonistic force. Right now, your protagonist and the writer, they're basically, I sometimes say it like this, they're in collusion. Does that make sense? Basically the writer's on the side of Raj, and he's against the antagonist, right? So they're in collusion. That is not what the writer does. The writer is testing the protagonist. The writer constructs circumstances that force the protagonist to a state that they don't want to go to one where they must change. That is in my story, worldview, the one thing that a character we can be absolutely sure of every single character that we deal with, maybe every single person on earth, the one thing that they want most in the world is not to change. We create a story that forces them to change. It's actually a very profound construction, actually, when you start to think about it. It's like a story is kind of a microcosm of the life cycle, right? Like we're born, we live life, and then we change at the end when we rejoin the universe. That's a little bit what the story cycle is about in a microcosm. It's a kind of ritual structure. And when we get protagonists and antagonists on the page, it will always work. So I think that this could be a very interesting story for you to pursue, Ashwani. Take it further, but also make the drive of the story be the protagonist's actions. He's not going to stand for this, right? I am not standing for this injustice. That will take you a long distance.
A couple of things. Now, Otis, you have harped a lot on the show don't tell adage, right?
Okay. Wait. Can we work with that language a little bit? I mean, harped.
The choice of the word was deliberate. Okay, the choice of the word was deliberate. Sorry.
Otis, you have bludgeoned us continually with the word, with the notion of.
No, I think bludgeon is fine. I thought harp would sting more. I'm sorry again.
Okay.
No, but in all fairness, it's something that I have also badgered people a lot with, who suffer the misfortune of making the mistake of asking me for feedback on the writing, and I'm terrible that way. But Ashwini, a couple of things I've thought were more show don't tell. So, for example, where you say Raj decided not to be on the defensive, right? You're telling us rather than showing us through words, gestures, actions of Raj. And the second one is, I think there a few lines down where you say Raj bluffed.
Yes.
Right.
So yeah.
So if we go to show don't tell, so this is the way we get into it. Like the more we try to do that, and the more we recognize, oh, I'm just telling there, then we start to think and we start to imagine. And I was saying this to someone the other day, as a writer, I actually become an actor. So I act out all the parts. So if I'm thinking of Raj decided not to be on the defensive, he's standing there, I would write, he took a step back. Right? He took a step. What do we do when we decide not to be not to be on? Oh, so he decided not to be on the defensive. He took a step forward, right? So not on. So he's taking the offense. He steps forward. If he's on the defensive, he takes a step back. In boxing, we talk about being on your heels. That's a defensive posture. Being on your toes is an offensive posture. So we want to think about how we can show that physically, basically. And what it ends up meaning is that I think this is a subtle thing. When we show and don't tell, we have a different relationship with our reader. We basically have to trust that they get what we are after. And you know what? They do. Because even though we don't have language for it, if we were standing in the street and we were having a conversation with someone and they lean towards us, we would feel it, right? Or if they leaned away from us, or some people talk to you too closely, you're like, so our reader, like every human being on earth, we are very perceptive to the physical world around us. Our survival depends on it, right? So we write those physical actions.